The next book that I ended up picking up was Always Never Yours by Emily. Oh, I hate saying her name. Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey, and we're about to get very, very nerdy with my July wrap-up. So, we have quite a handful of books to talk about today. I am actually shocked because July was supposed to be my least productive as far as reading goes month so far. Then somehow I read the most amount of books. Not the most amount of pages. I read quite a few graphic novels. But I read the most number of books, which is a little shocking. But I will take it. And because there's quite a few graphic novels on here, hopefully this will not take a million years because we don't need to be here for that long. So I did participate in 2 separate readathons in the month. I participated in the 48-hour Becca's Bookopoly-thon, and then I did participate in the Reading Rush. So if you want to see those vlogs, I will leave them down below because I do talk a little bit more about my thoughts on some of the books in this haul, or in this wrap-up. But I just wanted to mention that I did do those things this month. So check those out if you want to. So let's just dive on into the stats, why don't we? So in July, I read a total of 3,369 pages, and that was split over 3 audiobooks, 5 physical books, and 6 ebooks. What happened? And then I also read something in every single age category this month, which is interesting. So I had 2 children's books, 1 middle grade, 6 YA, 1 new adult, and 4 adult books. However, my genres were relatively small this month. I only had 4, so I had 6 fantasy, 6 contemporary, 1 women's lit, and 1 nonfiction. And then my ratings were also kind of all over the place this month because I had 4 5 stars, 6 4 stars, 2 3 stars, and 2 2 stars. So let's just get into them. So the very, very first book that I read this month was an art copy that I got off NetGalley, and that is The Exit Strategy by Lainey Cameron. This is out now. It came out this month sometime in July. I don't remember the exact date. I will link my Goodreads review down below because I did write a full thing on this. But this was my first NetGalley arc that I actually read and was accepted for. And it was surprisingly good. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I wasn't entirely sure about it going into it because it basically follows these 2 women who basically are both in love with the same guy and don't know it. One of them is this guy's wife and one of them is this guy's fiance who will eventually, they're planning their wedding together. And they don't know about each other, but they need each other to survive in their career because one works at a financial group, the wife works at a financial group, and then the fiance was going to this financial group to be a backer for her new kind of app that's to help prevent heart attacks. And so they need each other in their lives. But this book is very drama-filled, so if you don't like that kind of ridiculous drama in a book, then you're not gonna like this book. I did not mind it at all, but this one ended up tackling some really interesting things. So there are trigger warnings for sexism in the workplace, sexual harassment in the workplace, but by the end of it, it's really just about women empowering other women and basically women coming together to support each other. That's basically what it is, because the friendship that grows between these 2 women is incredible. I love seeing them grow together. This also felt like it came around the time of the Me Too movement. This felt like the author's reaction to that, specifically near the second half of the book. So it was just really interesting seeing all of that, but also reading the author's note at the end because this author has been in the tech business, and everything that they're talking about in this book, specifically with the Me Too movement, but also sexism in the workplace, she's had to deal with. So a lot of the situations that she puts our main character through, she's been put through herself. So it comes from a very real place, and you think that this is all utterly ridiculous, and then you read the author's note and you realize how much this is actually accurate. And so it's actually shocking, some of the things that you find out about the world. Some of the issues that I did have with this book are The plot's a little all over the place, so by the end of it, you realize what the main point is, which is the friendship between these two women. But, like, the main plot, which you think is going to be the fact that they have to deal with each other and they both fell for the same guy, isn't really the main plot sometimes. It's like there's about 3 different plot lines that are struggling to be the main one, and so it gets confusing after a while. This one I read in, like, the first couple days of the month, so it's been a while since I read it, so I'm having trouble remembering everything that I thought. But it was very good to tackle some of the issues, but it does have some flaws, and if some of the things, especially like the drama-filled ridiculousness, especially surrounding the husband/fiance, is a little ridiculous and stretching at sometimes, but if you can get past that and you don't mind ridiculous drama, then, like, you would enjoy this book. And then I followed that up with one of my favorite books of the month, and that was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This one got 4 stars for me. I love her writing. This is what I've decided. I've decided that Elizabeth Acevedo's writing is for me, and I'm really intrigued to see the novel that she wrote with Fire and High, I think it is, because it's not in verse, and I've only read things in verse by her so far. But the way that she writes is a very lyrical, poetic type of writing, but that's just her writing because the author's note is very similar to that. So I adore her writing style. I cannot believe it has taken me this long to read anything by her, but this book was incredibly good because it follows these 2 girls who have the same dad but don't know that they have the same dad, and then that dad dies in a plane crash, and it's kind of, how do you grieve for someone that means so much to you, but at the same time has so many secrets and is, like, maybe not this great hero, angel type of person that you thought he was. I like how she tackles grief in this book because it feels very real. It feels like there's a few instances where both daughters at one point don't believe that it's actually a thing, and so, like, they just kind of block it out of their mind and they want to deal with it at a different time. I don't really know how to explain it because they both handle it so differently, but it feels very real. This just feels like something that would happen. Also, I've been seeing a lot of things about how there is LGBTQ plus rep in this book, and I didn't understand what they were talking about. But now I get it. I see now. But it's, like, not advertised because that's obviously not the main point of the book. But the fact that there is rep in here just makes me incredibly happy. So I love this. This was so good. I will quite literally read anything that she writes now because I am in love with that much of her writing. It was so perfect. It was so good. Please read this book. It's amazing. Please read. So the next book that I ended up picking up was Always Never Yours by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca. This one I ended up giving 3.5 stars to. It had some good moments, but overall it just kind of felt very meh for me. The writing wasn't anything incredible. I think the problems that I had with this book was that our main character, whose name I'm forgetting, Megan annoyed the crap out of me most of the time, and she was just very unbelievable because she was boy crazy. That's her thing. Her thing is that she is boy crazy. She always knows that whoever she's dating is going to fall in love with the person they date after her. So she's just having fun while they're together and knows it's not going to last. And then there's this boy who's a playwright who's also doing Romeo and Juliet with her because she auditions to be in Romeo and Juliet because she needs a credit of acting to get into a certain college that she wants to get into. And then she gets cast as Juliet. And so it's this guy that's also been included that's kind of new, and, like, their friendship that turns into more. And it's just, like, she just annoyed me because she was so boy crazy, but it was boy crazy in a sense that was not believable for this age. She was obsessed with, like, physical relationships, not necessarily, like, emotional relationships. I mean, yes, high schoolers in theory would be obsessed with that, but it just felt like she was extra obsessed with that. And I felt like she was not the age she was supposed to be. I felt like she was in her 20s. Like, I felt like she was in college. Like, this was the college-aged girl that I was expecting. And it didn't feel believable for where she was in life. Some of the good things that I did like about this book was that she is the daughter of divorce, so her mom lives in a different state than her and has a boyfriend, and she lives with her dad and her stepmom who have, like, a 2-year-old kid, and the stepmom is pregnant again. And then she kind of finds out that they are thinking about moving states when she goes off to college, and she feels like she is being left behind and basically cut out of her parents' lives, and that she's no longer part of the family, and the minute that she graduates and goes to college, they're going to move on without her. So there's a lot of talk of like the loneliness she feels, especially with her family, and with all of these relationships they build on top of that, but specifically with her family, that kind of feeling of not belonging anywhere. So that's one that I liked, that theme throughout the entire book, and when they finally address the theme, kind of that, what, you know, comes from that. And then, like, there is, like, cute romancy moments, so, like, those were cute, which is why it did get a 3.5 star, but it was very just, like, middle of the road. I didn't really know what to expect from it. It was okay. I think I'll try other stuff by this author, because I know there's been a couple other things that have come out by them that revolve around Shakespeare, or, like, retellings of certain things, so I'm intrigued to read those books, but this one just wasn't my thing, and that's okay. So the next book, I'm actually going to do 2 books in one, because they're the same series, even though I didn't read them back to back. Anyway, it is the Tdragon Festival, which is the second in the Tdragon Society series, I think is what it's called. And then I also did get the arc of the Tdragon Tapestry, which is coming out this fall. Again, I will leave my Goodreads review of that, because NetGalley gave me an arc of that. Both of these got 5 stars. They are so cute. I remember not particularly loving the first one when I read it, and I think that was just because I wasn't quite sure what I was getting into, but when I realized it was for, like, kids specifically and much younger audiences, I was down for it. The art style is my favorite thing about these graphic novels, is that Katie O'Neill, who creates and draws all of this, is incredibly good. I want to read everything that she has put out there, because they are all so good. Her art style is incredibly beautiful, and these were just fun, and what I like about them is that they are all separate stories, so while it does make sense to read them in the order that she has given you, the second one is a prequel to the first one, and then the third one comes after the second. Wait. The second one is a prequel to the first graphic novel, and then the third one continues on a year after the first graphic novel. That's what I'm trying to say. It all has to do with each other, but, like, I feel like you can still go into it and understand what's happening without having read any of the other ones. It just makes a little more sense, and characters that pop up make more sense that way. But the stories are really cute. They always have a very underlying message that is very good. There is incredible representation in these books. Like, everything is in this book, and it's just cute, and I love them, and I understand why everyone is obsessed with them now. I'm there for them. So these are cute. I highly, highly recommend if you want a very, very quick read that is incredibly beautiful to look at, but also tackles a few things and has a lot of good representation. So check those out. And then the next one I picked up on a whim from the library, and that is The Poet X, because I loved Clap When You Land so much that I wanted to read her other book. This one also got 5 stars. It was incredible. Everything I said about Clap When You Land works here. Her style is beautiful. This one is also told in verse, just like Clap When You Land is. I want to read her second book, which is not in verse poetry. It is a standard novel, but her writing is incredible, and I want to read it all. Anything she writes, I want to read it. One of the things that I like the most about this book is that every single character in here is flawed. There is not a perfect character. They all have flaws for certain reasons, and they're all human, basically is what I'm saying. They all feel very, very real and very human, because none of them are perfect. And just the idea of this girl who is discovering poetry and spoken word for the first time, who comes from a very religious household, and the fact that her mom is not okay with a lot of the things that she does, and it's a rough backstory, and I like that it ends imperfectly, but there is the hope of stuff to come in the future. So I don't have a whole lot to say on this, because a lot of the things, like I said, that I felt about Clap When You Land, I felt about this book. She's an incredible author. I want to get my hands on this book as well. I only own Clap When You Land, but I want to own all of her books, because I really like her writing style. It meshes with me very well. The next one that I picked up was This Is What I Know About Art by Kimberly Drew. This is just a very teeny tiny book. It's a nonfiction basically about this woman who is very involved in art, and specifically like physical art, like museums and paintings and sculptures and things like that, and kind of how she, as a Black person in this world, relates to art, how you can use art to stand up and use your voice. And it's very small. It's got a handful of small essays about her life that she really just wants you to see the power of art. I loved this. I gave it 4 stars because it was very short. And like, I realized that's the point. It's supposed to be incredibly short. It's just supposed to be a quick thing to make you think. And I wanted it to be longer. I loved learning about this woman. I want her to write her own story. Like, I am so intrigued by her story that if she wrote a memoir, I would be the first in line to get it, because it was so fascinating learning about her life when it relates to art, because like, she's not an artist herself, she just works in the world of art. And like, she even worked at the Met at one point, and like, what is life? So this is this is good. I like what she says. I like how she writes. It's very conversational. It's very easy to understand. She's just kind of like telling you about her life. This is how it is. This is what I've noticed. This is the things that I want you to take away, and I just want you to think about it and see what you can do differently. So I highly recommend this. This also came out in June, I want to say. And then the next book that I read was one of the ones that I disliked the most, and that is The Story of Lee Volume 1. This is a manga that I picked up from Hoopla because my library actually got on the Hoopla app finally, so I can start reading like graphic novels on my husband's iPad where I can see it. So I want to get into manga. Manga is a series or a genre that I feel like I found a couple things that I like, but I'm just still trying to figure out what's out there, what I like. Is it for me? That kind of stuff. So I wanted to give this one a shot. About a girl who lives in Hong Kong who meets a boy who is from the UK, and he's a teacher in Hong Kong, and her father is very like traditional, no other people who are not Chinese, and they strike up a friendship and things go from there. This got 2 stars from me. I had a lot of problems with this book. Specifically, it didn't, like, it mentioned certain things, and then okay. So I had 3 main issues with this. The first one is that there's a scene where they kind of are using slang terms for different groups of people, and they're not particularly racist slangs, or like the way that they're talking isn't particularly racist, but it kind of is. And the way that they talk about it, it's kind of like they mention this could possibly be racist, and then like they never mention it again, and it's kind of felt to me like it was the author's way of saying, look, I've addressed the thing, we can move on now and I can continue doing what I was doing before. And I was like, no. And then there was also this scene where like the boy kind of forces sex on the girl, and he doesn't take no for an answer until she physically stands up and leaves, and not okay with that either. And then the third problem I had was with the dad. The dad was very traditional, like I said, but he was also kind of abusive to the wife, which is our main girl Lee's mom, because like he comes home one night and she has accidentally fallen asleep, and he gets really mad at her for not having his dinner ready, and he can't believe that he has to wait on her to make his dinner. And I was like, excuse me, no. So lots of issues, and also the ending was very like, it wrapped up very quickly, and it felt like the dad was like, something happens in the book and that makes the dad rethink everything, and then he's okay, like he's flip-flopped his thoughts on certain things. And I was like, that's not how that would happen. It would take you a long time to change your core beliefs on certain things. So I didn't like that. Gave it 2 stars. And then I followed that up with a great book, which is the 8th in the series of Unfortunate Events, which is The Hostel Hospital. This and one I gave 4 stars. Yes, I gave 4 stars to. It was quite a lot of fun. I enjoyed going into this because this is the first one where it doesn't like follow the same cookie cutter type of plotline and story, where like the kids go to a guardian, things happen, then they move to a new guardian, things happen, like that. This is when they're like on their own for the first time, and I just liked seeing it. And There are things in here that I remembered, and then there are things that I didn't remember, and I liked that we're seeing glimpses and getting more and more information on their parents, because we're starting to learn a little bit about the background for their parents. I just like seeing how, like, the author's name is not Lemony Snicket. That's like a pen name that he's using, because Lemony Snicket is actually part of the Baudelaire story, and I just like seeing more and more him being part of the story and them learning things out, and it's just fun. I just like it. And I also like that in this one specifically, Sunny, the youngest Baudelaire, is starting to speak English, because before she would just speak gibberish and then like the orphans or the narrator would have to translate for her, and she still does that, but in this book half the time now she's using words that actually make sense to the story, and you're like, yes, and then you move on. It was great. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to start the next one. And also I listened to the audiobook of this by Tim Curry, because they're amazing, and everyone should read these books that way. Just saying. And then I followed that up with a very stupid decision, because I decided to pick up the second volume of The Story of Lee. Why? It got 2 stars from me. The first one was so bad, but like Hoopla had the second one, and there's only 3 volumes in this series. And so I was like, this is, I needed to finish it. It bothered me that I hadn't read the completed series, and now it's bothering me that I don't have access to the third one, because like, do I care? No. But it bothers me that I haven't finished it. So this one was just boring. Like, I don't really have anything that was problematic about it. It was just boring. I didn't really care about the characters. There were some issues, because there's a lot of like relationship issues that they're having, because now that they're in a new country, they go study abroad together, and we're just seeing their relationship and how imperfect it is, and I just didn't care. I really didn't care. So yeah, that's it. I have no thoughts on that one, really. And then I followed that one up with a great one as well, and that is Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shannon Maguire. I buddy read this one with Tessa from Tessa Loves channel here on YouTube, so, you know, check her out, obviously. This was great. I gave it 4 stars, or 4.5 stars, which I'm pretty sure is the exact rating that I gave the first one. It was so much fun. So this is a backstory to the characters of Jack and Jill from the first book. And Jack is my favorite character. I love her. So getting their backstory was fascinating, especially because in the first book, you get like a few sentences where she's talking to the main character of the first book, kind of about her parents and her world and kind of her experiences to where she is now. So you get kind of an idea about it, but then like you really get to see it in here, which is very interesting. One thing that I didn't realize, but like it didn't hinder my enjoyment, was that I expected this to start relatively soon to when they entered the world. I expected this to take place mostly in the world. And it took place about 60% in the world, because you had, no, it was probably closer to half in the world, because you had quite a few chapters at the beginning about the girls and their parents and how the parents basically trained them to be a certain way. And then when they got to this world, they realized that they could be the opposite and be actually what they wanted to be. It was very good. I thought the pacing was very well done, especially considering it's such a small book. I would have liked to see a little bit more of the middle section, because it's kind of told in like an omniscient, like third person narrator type style, where like the narrator knows all and is giving you hints, but then goes, so we're going to skip over all of this time and get to the kind of end and why they had to leave their world. And I was like, but I want to know all that in between time. Why did you take that away from me? So it didn't hurt the plot, but I would have liked to see them in this world a little bit more. There's also some great rep in here, which I should have expected considering the first book had a lot of good rep, so this had some good rep in it as well. And it was just very good, and I cannot wait to read the third one. This is like a good series, and her writing is just for me. Like, it's for me. We like that. Alright, the next book that I finished was a beast. And that was Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. Sorry, no, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, which is the first in the Mistborn series. I listened to this on audiobook, obviously, because, like, while it's not huge looking right here, the font is very tiny, and, like, this book is dense in a good way. I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this one. It took me basically the entire month to read. I started it, like, relatively soon in the beginning of the month, and I didn't really know what I was getting into. I don't read a whole lot of high fantasy, and I'd never read a very dense high fantasy that's an adult high fantasy. I read a lot of YA fantasy, so this was like my first step into that, and I really enjoyed it. Because it took me so long to read, there's a whole lot that I've forgotten about this book, but the thing that sticks out the most is that the main character in this, Kelsey, reminds me a lot of Kaz from Six of Crows, because he's the leader of a gang. He is basically trying to do a certain thing to get an end goal, which is money. Whereas this Kelsey has a little bit better of a plan, because he is trying to enact change and he is trying to be kind of a good person, but every single person in here is morally gray. There is not a person in here that is straight up good. They all have flaws and they all have issues, and there's a piece of hair that's driving me crazy. So I very much liked that a lot. I also liked the magic system in here, because I'd heard lots of things about this magic system, but I didn't really know what I was getting into, because if you haven't read this book and you learn that the magic system is all about ingesting metals, and each metal that you ingest has a very specific power, and so it's very bizarre learning about that, or like hearing about it when you haven't been exposed to this world, and then when you're in this book learning about that is just fascinating, because basically you're following a girl named Vin who is a Mistborn but doesn't realize that she's a Mistborn, and as she's learning about the world, so are you. And I really, really liked that. I liked that this world was very atmospheric. It was just very dense. It just took me a while to get through. I do want to continue with this series, but I don't think I'm going to start the second one anytime soon. I think it'll be at least a couple months before I start the second one. But it was very good, and I understand why people really like this series, so I am very much intrigued. The ending about broke me, so, like, that was fun. But it was good, and, like, I didn't think I would have this strong of a opinion about it. But I did. So, that was a good decision on my part to actually, like, give that one a shot. And the very last one that I picked up was an Audible original that I had in, like, my library for, I don't know, a few weeks now. And I had, like, 2 days left in the month, and I wanted to read something, but I knew that, like, I was not going to get done with, like, a full book. So I picked this one up, and that is Once More Upon a Time by Roshani Chokshani. This one was just fun and entertaining. I ended up giving this one 4 stars because I did have a couple of issues with it, but overall it was just a fun fairy tale story about this couple who falls in love, and then after being together for a day, after being married for a day, something happens, and I think she eats, like, a poison fruit or something, and then to basically save her, this witch does, but the price is that they fall out of love and they forget why they have fallen in love. And they live in this place where after a year and a day of ruling, if they aren't in love anymore, then they can't rule. And she is one of the 12 dancing princesses, and he is just a prince. I just liked the layering in of all of the other fairy tales within this story. It was told with 3 narrators, so you had someone who played the princess, or the queen, someone who played the king, and then someone who played a narrator who turned out to be a witch. And it was just fun. Some of the things that I had the problems with were that it was, every time they switched between people, or every time they, like, would switch between chapters, they would have this little, like, doo-doo-doo sound of, like, magical music, and most of the time that didn't bother me, but after, like, hearing it 12 times, and then you still have another 10 chapters, it gets a little annoying, and it really only bothered me after, like, the repetition bothered me, but then it only bothered me in the story, because there was one time when like it switched perspectives from the girl to the guy mid-sentence, and like that would have been fascinating and very clever to do if they had just literally went to the next person, but instead they made the little do-do-do sound and then they went to the next person, and I was like, if you had just left that out, that line would have been more impactful and it would have done what you wanted it to do, but because you left the stupid little music in, it doesn't. It was good, it was cheesy, it's a fairy tale romance, it's very short because it is a novella. This is the one that I think is more new adult than anything else, because when I look online I can't find a genre or like an age category that it is, but it definitely has some steamy scenes in it, and the humor is a little more adult, so I'm gonna say it's a new adult because it doesn't feel quite adult yet. It feels still a little bit young, so we're gonna go with new adult. But it was interesting because the writing is very much what I expected from her, but like what I've read from her is her middle grade book. So when you have that type of writing where you've only ever seen it in like a younger kind of story, and then you see it in a book where they make like jokes about sex, and you're like, wait a second, those things don't compute in my brain. It was just funny, but it was good. I very much enjoyed it. If you like fairy tale romance stories, particularly in novellas that have happy endings and are very rom-com-esque, then this one is for you. So those are all of the books that I read this month. They were quite good. I had some that were like real bad, but then I also had some that were like really good. I think I found a new favorite author, which is Elizabeth Acevedo. We like her. So it was pretty decent. I had a good month. I don't know why I'm surprised by that. But let me know down below if you've read any of these books or what your thoughts on them were. Let's chat about books. What's something that you read in July that you loved? I would like to know. Tell me all the things. But if you did like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to be part of this awesome and growing family. I've also got my social media down there as well if you want to check out any of those. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!